Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode on the Wicked Campfire podcast with me, Phyllis Mackenzie. And today we have a new guest, a ghost tour guide. She'll be among the first. We've had ghosts on this podcast, but we haven't had like an expert on ghost tours themselves. But before we begin, remember, check out the description for all our social media pages and anywhere else you might want to listen us from for both me and today's guest. And if you have listened to the previous episode, she's not a new face here. Ladies and gentlemen, is Rissa Miller. Welcome back, Rissa.
Thank you again. I love being here, and I can't wait to talk about ghosts and ghost hunting and ghost tours and haunted history.
Yeah, and this is like a new take because last time we talked about tea leaf reading and smoke scrying, but today it's purely ghosts, purely paranormal things. And because we are talking particularly as you, as a ghost tour guide, I'd like you to tell us, how did you get into ghost tour guiding? Because I've never met an actual person who does ghost tours.
Well, this is another one of those stories, just like with the tea leaf reading, that goes all the way back to when I was a little girl. So when I'm going to say in third grade, going into fourth, so that would make me 8 or 9 years old. My parents took me to England, and it was a family vacation. We went to, it was a typical family vacation. We went in and out of a million historic sites and restaurants, and they were trying to absorb as much in two weeks in England as possible. And one of the things we did was go on a ghost tour, and it was in a town called York, England. I can still see it in my mind, even though it was almost 40 years ago. I can remember parts of that ghost tour. I can remember the woman who was telling the stories and talking about the ghosts. I remember going in with my mom and dad to one of the haunted sites, and I had one of my first, not my true first, but one of my first outside of home kind of ghost experiences in England when I was there as a child. And I would say that at that moment, the idea was planted in my head that when I grew up, somehow I could do some kind of work that was something to do with ghosts. And nowadays there's a lot of work that has stuff to do with ghosts, because we have people who are ghost hunters. We have TV shows. There must be a dozen TV shows about ghost hunting and haunted sites. And that's without even touching into the UFOs or monsters or anything like that. But so many TV shows are about ghosts now. But I really loved the stories. I loved the stories about the people who lived in these old buildings, what their lives were like, and maybe why they still had stuck around. Why were they still there? Those were the things that really captured me, just as much as the idea of connecting across the veil. It was the idea that I could know something about someone's life by a ghost story.
And you've done most tours, and so what are some of the most haunted locations you've been at, where you can say there's a lot of paranormal energy going around in these locations?
So where I do most of my tours in Maryland is a town called Ellicott City. And, you're going to find this very interesting. It is on a very particular kind of bedrock. And I have come to learn over time from parapsychologists and ghost hunters that this particular kind of rock holds ghosts. Whatever towns are built on top of this kind of composite rock that has quartz crystal in it, it is just a ghost magnet. There's a town in Pennsylvania called Gettysburg that's considered one of the 10 most haunted places in North America. And it's on the same rock that Ellicott City is on, same exact bedrock. So Ellicott City is considered one of Maryland's most haunted towns. It's old. It's pre-revolutionary for the United States, but it's not as old as some other places. And the fascinating thing is natives did not live there. Natives thought the land had a spiritual connection in Ellicott City, and they did not live there, despite the fact there was water, there was plentiful wildlife, there was fantastic land for farming, for foraging, but natives did not live in the land that is now Ellicott City. And that's
Mm-hmm.
always an interesting beginning to that story. So it's a very haunted town. Most of the ghosts there are friendly, though. They're not scary, at least not to me. And
Mm-hmm.
we call them benevolent spirits because they're friendly and sometimes even helpful or even life-saving.
Mm-hmm.
They have been a good presence on the town overall. Now, there are bad spirits out there, just like there are bad people out there. You know, when giving my
Mm-hmm.
ghost tours, I tell people, ghosts are like other people you encounter. Most of them aren't concerned about you. They're going about their own business. And most ghosts are the same. They have their own agenda. They just happen to pass by you. You might see them, hear them, feel them, but they're not really there for you. The next smallest number is the friendly spirits, just like in life. There are more people who are just doing their thing, and then there's this other segment of people that want to be nice to you. They want to be
Mm-hmm.
friendly. They want to be kind. They're there to lend a hand. But then even smaller than that are the truly bad people. And it's the same with ghosts. The truly bad ghosts are actually, despite what TV tells you, a more rare commodity, at least in my experience, in the experience of others I know in my industry. We don't run across them very often at all. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
you watch some of the TV shows, you would think all that's out there are like the worst of the worst. I think that just sells commercials. I mean, TV shows have to make money. You know, that's part
Mm-hmm.
of their job. So I think that excitement probably sells ads. And it's not exciting when a ghost story is happy and everybody is, you know, smiling at the end. That's not
Mm-hmm.
nearly as
Mm-hmm.
exciting for a television show that needs to have, you know, X thousands of dollars of ad revenue.
Yeah, and there's this thing that has been happening a lot, especially with recent years with paranormal investigators. They're receiving a lot of attachments when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to spirits, and often bad spirits, they're getting attached to these people, and really bad things are happening to them. Have you had people tell you these kinds of experiences of,
Yes.
or maybe yourself have encountered these types of experiences?
You know, many years ago when I was in my early 20s, I was having a lot of health struggles. And I mean, it was really bad. And there was at a spot where doctors just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They didn't seem to be able to help. And I went to an acupuncturist and she said, I think you have a spirit attachment. And I was so confused. I said, I've never heard of that. What is it? And she said, well, your energy got very low. So like a parasitic energy came and like attached to you, basically,
Mm-hmm.
because you weren't big enough. Your energy field wasn't big enough to sort of fight it off, to create a boundary, if you will. Because my boundaries were
Yeah.
down, because I was already actually sick. I just kept getting sicker though, because this spirit energy that was parasitic, basically, for lack of a better word, decided to hang on. I
Mm-hmm.
laugh about it now, but at the time it wasn't funny. So she did a treatment with her acupuncture needles and with energy work, and it was not the most pleasant experience having that lifted away. But I'm super grateful that I happened to be going to an acupuncturist who was open to that idea, who was brave enough to talk to me about it, and also knew what to do. So, I mean, lucky for me,
Mm-hmm.
it left. I am no longer depleted, and I have lived many happy years without it. It has also been my experience that, yes, I do hear about more and more people having these. There are people that talk to me about it on ghost tours. You know, there are people who show up on ghost tours looking for information about that very thing. Even
Mm-hmm.
though that's not like a normal part of the ghost tour, they'll stop me at the end and say, there's this thing in my house, or this thing attached to my mother, or whatever the case may be for them. And they're asking, how do I fix it? And, you know, I always tell them, like, first, you know, you have to decide, like, where does your belief and faith lie? Like, if you are a very religious person, perhaps you should find a priest. If you are a person who, like me, was seeing an acupuncturist, perhaps you should find an acupuncturist that can help. You know, you just, what will work for you. Some people I say, you know, if you want to talk to a medium, I can recommend mediums that specialize in dealing with this kind of spiritual siege almost. and they're really good at it. It's what they do. I mean, that's not what I do, but yes, what you're talking about, I've definitely encountered it. It does happen. It doesn't happen to everyone. I don't want to put like a feeling of fear into your listeners.
Yeah.
You know, I think this actually is a really good point. Have strong boundaries for yourself. Always. I mean, it's important in regular life too, not to let people walk all over you like a rug. But you also don't want to let spirit entities walk all over you like a rug either. So, in just the way you have boundaries with the people in your world, with, you know, colleagues or, you know, neighbors, whatever, it's important to have the kind of boundaries that protect you spiritually as well. And that's going to look different for everybody listening to this. It depends on where your faith is. It depends on if you meditate or pray or you have some other kind of practice that makes your spirit and your heart unite and feel strong enough that you're not going to be interesting to those kinds of entities. Like they're simply not going to be able to get past the fence, so they're not going to bother with you. And I think it's so important, especially so many people in the current state of the world are just emotionally and spiritually suffering because there's so much going on that is out of our control or feels out of our control. I mean, like the weather, for example, is out of our control. But I think to still try, if in any way that makes sense to anybody listening or to you, take a moment to reinforce your spiritual boundaries, to think about what they are, to make your energy and your spirit strong. I mean, sometimes it just means a great night of sleep is really important. But talking to whatever deity or God or angel speaks to you, talking to your ancestors. I mean, that's actually a big one for me. I do talk to my ancestors. I believe they are with me, and I believe that I neglected them for a very long time. And that's one of the reasons I fell down. I wasn't connecting to my ancestors, to my past, to my roots, to the things that make me literally who I am. And I got pulled backwards when I wasn't connecting in that way. So for anybody listening, if you're worried about a spirit attachment, yes, I believe it to be real, but I would also say that it is an avoidable crisis that you don't have to ever experience. You just need good, strong boundaries. And, you know, if that means for you that you meditate and there's a necklace that you hold that connects you, always wear it. You know, I know that some people are very into crystals, and they have crystals that actually, you know, in case this came up, I wore my tourmaline crystal bracelet. It looks like this. And tourmaline crystal comes in black and white. And as you can see, it is quite pretty. I don't know. Do you have video on your podcast? Or is it just
No. But we can just link pictures for them where they can see it on social media.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a tourmaline bracelet. I wear it almost every day. I definitely wear it anytime I leave the house. And the whole idea is that tourmaline crystal protects you from negative energy that wants to attach to you. So I definitely always wear it when I'm doing ghost tours or going into very old buildings, or if I'm going around a lot of people, like a festival, something like that. There's all kinds of energy flying around places like that. And I don't necessarily want somebody's bad day to stick to me just as much as I don't want a spirit entity to stick to me.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have the evil eye bracelets. I know you might have seen them. They look like, of course I don't have one on. The evil eye is thousands of years old. It predates Christianity. It predates Judaism. It goes back to like the beginnings of civilization. It looks like an eye. And the whole idea is that it's like a mirror charm. If somebody is sending something bad to you, be them mortal or spirit, it sends it back. It's like a return to sender. So if folks are worried, I would say find a craftsperson who makes evil eye bracelets or necklaces or whatever, and find one that speaks to you. Find one that feels like it's your protection charm.
Yeah, because growing up, you just said that and then it clicked something in my head. Growing up, my mom used to like sage the house.
Yes,
or
same
maybe
idea.
use incense as well. Like every single day, we wouldn't run out of incense, and she'd like bless the whole entire house and everything that's in it, so that whenever you have any evil eye cast upon you, it doesn't work on you per
Right.
se. And I used to think it's skepticism at that time, but growing up, as you grow up, as you meet more people online, you're like, oh, wait, it's just not in my household. It's something universal. Everybody has their own way. Some people have crystals. Some people have sages. Some people have holy water. Some people have crucifix. Some people have the rosary itself. So it depends on what your belief is or what you think will help. But at the end of the day, you're just protected, and nothing bad will happen to you. And something else is that I cut it out from the previous episode, like I told you, but I did tell you a story about when I was in high school and then all these things started happening, the time my third eye actually opened. And that's when I realized when people start searching for things, that's when the quote unquote evil spirits or the demonic presence will start following you. You'll find some people are trying to find solace, maybe finding an ancestor, maybe finding an answer, maybe finding a dead relative. And what you get, it's not per se what you were looking for. It's something pretending to be whatever you're looking for. And some people will say, oh, this is all in movies, this is all in what? No, because you'll find that even for ghosts themselves, some people are bitter. Some of them are very, very bitter. They didn't die in good terms. They're not like good ghosts. They're very bitter, and their sole purpose is just to destroy all living things that comes to like disrupt their turf and all that. So if you go search for this thing, maybe you're going there. This is why I hate Ouija boards, by the way. You can never convince me to be 100 feet from a Ouija board or anybody opening a portal to a Ouija board, because you'll find some people open this thing, they're saying, oh, we're just doing it for fun and games. Oh, we saw these old ancient writings, so we are gonna draw down the Star of David and call out to the ancestors. But what you're actually doing is opening something that is not of this world. And you'll find that, and I know you've found that out in most of the haunted places, that it's not only the ghosts that are there, like spirits of those that are dead from those who lived there before. It's something else, something unexplainable, something evil. You can't really put a finger on it. And this is what I think makes people skeptic about the paranormal activity, because you can't just tell people, oh, ghosts are good, and then another person comes and says, you know what, I went there, those ghosts are not good, something evil was there. So you'll find that there's like a gray area when people come together and try to understand the paranormal community itself, or paranormal investigations themselves, or even ghost tours for you. Because I know you've had those times where a group of people are coming, and out of those groups of people, there's always one person who is 100% a skeptic. Like they're going there, they're like, or terrified. And when they go in there, they're like, I know whatever is happening here has an explanation. And I'll try and find it. But when they don't, they start getting spooked. They're like, oh, wait, this can be explained. There's no draft. There's no open doors. So why did that window, or why did this and this fall? Why did this and this move? Why did that stair creak? Why can I hear voices? Yeah. You find a lot of people are like, oh, maybe these ghost tours, they're trying to put something in the air to confuse your brain. Because I've heard some people say that what if they emit some gases in this building that makes you hallucinate these things? Or some people are like, you tell these stories so much that your brain starts to play these images to you in real time. And some people are like, you know what? It's just darkness. Most paranormal investigators go into pitch dark buildings, and then you start seeing things from the corner of your eye. But that's the beauty of it all. You cannot explain the paranormal interactions that you receive, because my experience won't be your experience, won't be the other person's experience. Even though we're in the same location, we will receive different experiences. Some person will be touched, some person will hear things, some person will actually get to see. When they give themselves that chance to see, they'll actually get to see. And your experience won't be similar to the other person. It's actually quite rare that I've heard a group of people having the same exact similar experience. Not like a group will have, like, we both heard this, we both saw this,
Right.
we both witnessed this. No, you'll hear this lot saying, no, we heard this. And then this other person was like, no, when you heard that, I saw this. And then when the other person was like, when you saw this, I felt this. So
what's a great way to know that you're being faked too? I mean, if everybody sees and hears the same thing, it might be a recording.
Or maybe fiction. Maybe they planned it all out when they're going in there. Yeah. Because especially for YouTube, when you look at paranormal investigators who are YouTubers and all that, and then you try to witness. I've been looking. There are some genuine channels, but there are others you're like, wait, this is totally fake. Like, you faked your reactions, you faked everything. There's no way this happened. But you'll find for other people, this is actually true. Because I don't know if you saw that documentary. It was like, I think in 2020 or 2021, that was released, a paranormal investigative documentary where they spent, is it 28 days investigating specific places. They slept there, they ate there, they lived there.
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the series per se, but
I think it was 28 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think they spent 28 days. But there was a group that couldn't finish the 28 days because it got so bad. And that's when I was like, you know what? That's true paranormal investigation. That is what actually happens. And that's what you yourselves and also other ghost tour guides try to show people, like, this is what happens. So when you go in, maybe you'll see something else, but this is what normally happens. So if you see something else, just tell us and we'll try to explain to you what other people have been seeing per se and all that thing. But I'm curious, how do you prepare for a ghost tour? Because for paranormal investigators, I know how to prepare if I'm trying to go for a paranormal investigation. But as a ghost tour guide, on your end, how do you prepare for all this?
I do have a routine, actually, and all the other guides I know have their own way of doing it. So well, first of all, we wear historic costumes. So when I put that on, it's almost kind of like I'm getting into a different state of mind. And once those long skirts are on and I have laced up my dress, which is very old-fashioned, I'm kind of already like in a different place, and I'm ready to always respectfully for me, approach these buildings, these sites. And the one thing I will say is I have been on ghost hunts and I have done ghost tours for many years. And I feel like it is important to approach with respect, because even if you are going towards a building that you know has malevolent spirits, which I certainly have, I don't approach it with the idea that I'm going to yell at them or be tougher than them. That's not my personality. And I know that some people do, and that's their way. But I have a certain amount of reverence and also caution going into a situation that I know is really out of my control. I mean, everything's really out of our control, to be honest. But all of that said, I don't approach any of the sites that I talk about carelessly. I definitely have studied all my notes many times over and practiced giving the talk part of it, so that the people who are there who are just interested in history, and that's definitely a thing too. There are people who come on ghost tours because they want to learn about a place more than they want to learn about ghosts. So we have a range of people. Do you know what I mean? There are folks that are like new to town and they just want to know the history of the area. So I have all of that in my back pocket. I can certainly talk about it. And then I talk about the theory, many different theories of what ghosts are or why ghosts stay. And the different kinds of ghosts. So like the repetitive spirit that's sort of just an echo. That's not actually a spirit entity. That's just a scar across time space. Those are the most common ones where I am. And they don't interact. They don't have they aren't, speaking, or they just always do the same thing over and over and over. So we have a lot of repetitive spirits everywhere that I have been a tour guide. And then after that, the interactive spirits. And everybody wants to hear those stories. and they always hope they come out, which is an interesting dynamic. They are hoping that, like, I can think of very particular ones that everybody wants to see because they're, quite striking, or they're wearing a woman in a Victorian dress and everybody wants to see her. There is the ghost in Ellicott City of a horse-drawn stagecoach. Everybody wants to see that because it's dramatic. I've never seen it. But it's like this huge stagecoach that appears in the middle of the street and rides up a hill. I've never seen it. It sounds amazing, but I've never seen it myself. I know people who have, but I'm not one of them. That is just a repetitive spirit, though. It doesn't ever do anything differently. It's always the same. I feel like the other thing I do, besides making sure I am, securely in my historic costume and I have all my notes fresh in my mind, I do have a grounding practice where I make sure that I am solidly grounded, and I speak to my particular spirit guides and protectors. And I also ask the benevolent spirits of the place to be with me and to help me share their story in the way that they want. That I'm open to their nudges of what part of their story they want told that night. But I specifically address who I want to talk to. I don't open it up to the whole crowd. It's a lucky thing that where I am, there aren't a ton of histories of malevolent spirits, but there are some. And the only one of my guests to ever get a picture on a guided tour was of a malevolent spirit. And I can't show you that right here. Maybe on my phone I can, but I could send you the picture. But do you want to see it before I pull it up?
Yeah. Show me.
Okay. It is a little spooky. I'm not going to lie. It's hang on. I'm looking for it on my phone. I should have marked it before I got on with you.
That's all right.
Here we go. I'm in the right month. And I'm searching. But it looks a little bit like there we go. If you look at the top of my phone, hopefully this focuses. It's up. You see the arrow? It's pointing to a face that is here.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yep. So that is a building that we know to have a very dark entity in it. It has tossed people downstairs. People have come out with huge cuts on their body that needed stitches. And the government where that building was like, oh, it's a nice old building. We're going to make it into a children's museum. Ooh. And that's what they did.
That was a bad idea.
That's what they did. So far, so good. It hasn't seen a ton of groups yet, but so far, so good. Nobody's been hurt, but all the time it's sat empty. There are other tour guides who won't even walk onto the sidewalk in front of it. They feel like it just has that much bad energy. There is an old jail in Maryland on one of my tours, and I don't go up to it very, very close. It does have a very heavy energy around it. It was where they did executions, and you can kind of feel this old darkness around the building. And I haven't personally had any experiences there. I know a lot of stories of people who have. And I just, I don't invite it in. I don't head over there. I don't touch the building. I don't taunt the spirits. I respect their space, and I respect the experience they had in their mortal life was probably not a great one. And I give them the respectful distance that I would want if it were me.
Yeah, but when you mentioned that, I think I should just mention, when we started this podcast, like when you go back all the way to the very first episode of this podcast, for those who had been listening since then, when I started this podcast, I didn't know if I was going to get potential guests for the podcast per se. So what I wanted to do was like have a podcast where I can track every single paranormal activity on this planet, trying to find their connections. And I even have a map and everything. I'll send you the link to the map. And for those listening, the link is in the description. Like you can check my paranormal activities map. Because I realized when when paranormal investigators go to specific locations, let's say my first town not even a first town, the first state that I started with was Nebraska. So Nebraska, I touched on Sentinel Hall and Captain Bailey House. Those were two, like they're miles apart, but facing each other. Like in one city and a different city, but when you check it on a map, they're like facing each other. And surprisingly, the thing is that the people that died in Captain Bailey House and the girl that died in Sentinel Hall died in the same fashion. They both died of poisoning. Different decades, different years, but they were both poisoned. So that triggered my mind. What could be the connection between different paranormal places? You'll find that people go to these paranormal locations, and that way the stories get old, by the way. You'll find that someone says, oh, you know what? In this paranormal place, a lot of people were hanged here. And then you look like, you tried looking like in 100-mile radius, you realized, oh, also to the north, there's another building where people are hanged. And, oh, the other side, people also hanged in that building. And they also have the same paranormal activities going on. You'll find that if chairs move in this particular location, they also move in the other location. If people are getting cuts and bruises in this location, they're also getting similar cuts and bruises in that location. So it triggered my mind, what could be that connection? Because the only difference is the residual energies, like you said, those that don't interact. Those are the only differences between these paranormal locations. But those malevolent spirits, they're quite similar in each and every state, in each and every country, in each and every nation on this planet. So I was trying to find out, could there possibly, hopefully be like the mother of all hauntings, like that one place where it's so unique, no other place has similar hauntings to it. Like there is no residual energies, there are no ghosts, it's just evil spirits. And that's when it triggered my mind. That's what I'll do the podcast about that. And people are like, oh no, you're talking about the connections, aren't those ley lines? I'm like, no, don't think about it as ley lines. Think about it as what if somebody got an attachment and moved it to this place.
That's very realistic thing.
Yeah, or maybe portals were open, because you'll find that a lot of people open portals in terms of let's say what communication with the dead. That's one way they can open portals, and they never closed it. So how are these spirits moving? Not in a ley line wise, but in vortexes form, or maybe portal form, or maybe attachment form. And I started like researching and contacting any ghost guide I can find. I'm like, hey, yo, check out this map. Tell me if it makes sense in your state. Hey, yo, check out this map. Tell me if it makes state. And I was going on like that. And now I'm trying to find that connection. And I'm like, ooh, Rissa has now talked about Maryland and Pennsylvania. I'm adding that to my list, and I'm adding her locations as well. Because you'll find that hopefully, somehow, I'll get those connections. And I've started.
If you keep at it, you will.
Yeah, I've started finding those connections, like possible vortexes, or I call them vortexums. They're like small portals or small vortexes. It's not something you can see right there, but it was possibly opened a very, very long time ago. And the funny thing is, they're all the same. It's either in someone's backyard, in a creek somewhere, or in the middle of nowhere. Those are the three things I find. Like, if you try to find the locations that have similar hauntings, you'll find that one point where it could possibly be the crossing, it's either in a creek or in the middle of nowhere or in someone's backyard. I'm sorry to the person I geotagged. If that's your backyard, please check. You might have hauntings in your building and you don't know. It's quite possible. And hopefully I'll find them. And I'll share with you that map. You can hopefully share with other people. I'm trying to find as much help as possible. Any paranormal investigator out there, or maybe any tour guide that might have information of paranormal places, they just send me information and I'm like, okay, this is good. What's next? Which other place, which is close by that has similar things? Or who has reported their homes having similar things? Or who has come to you saying they live nearby and they have a ghost in their home? That's the connection I'm trying to look for. I'm not trying to look for ley lines for those who are listening. Ley lines have been there for decades. I'm not trying to find ley lines. I'm trying to find these portals. I'm trying to find these openings that people have opened, or maybe attachments that stuck.
Moved.
Yeah, stuck or moved with people. Because you find situations like that. You have an attachment and then suddenly it's gone. But where did it go?
I've actually heard of that spontaneously happening before too.
Yeah, I think what they do is that they just feed off your energy enough for you to move them from place to place until they find a different kind of energy to feed off. So maybe you were the vessel to move. They moved you from one paranormal place to the next. And then when they got there, they found someone else who they can attach to. So they leave you be, and then they attach to this stronger energy. That's my theory about all this. Of course, I haven't proved anything. This is all a hypothesis. But anybody who could have information of these places, I'll just put the link. Anybody can check them, and then we can just work it out together, like a big paranormal society. That's what I was thinking about. A big, huge paranormal society spread across the nations. We can all talk about our ghost experiences, our paranormal investigations, ghost tours, and we try to find that one cell tower of all paranormal activity.
I don't know about the world, but in Pennsylvania, there's a place you might want to look up called Chestnut Ridge.
Uh-huh.
Now, Chestnut Ridge has ghosts. It's a UFO hotbed, and they even are said to have like cryptids and monsters there. And I haven't personally seen any of it, but Chestnut Ridge is considered the hot spot in the state of Pennsylvania for all paranormal activity of all kinds. Not just one, but everything. Everything. There have, I believe, been disappearances there, like people went hiking and disappeared. It's just, it's probably worth looking at. I don't know what water it might be near or anything like that. I've never looked at it from a geographical standpoint like that, but I felt called to tell you about it as I heard you speaking, because I know that everyone in this region of the country that talks about paranormal stuff knows Chestnut Ridge, knows about it. And many people have been there. It's also just like a lovely wooded area, you know? But,
convenient.
yeah, it's also a lovely wooded area to eat a picnic. But that said, it has had a history going back very long time of just strange activity, all kinds of stuff happening. And as you were talking, it made me also remember that so many ghost stories and other kinds of paranormal activity happen along waterways, not just creeks, but rivers too. And I'm even thinking, like, right now my mind's going, and that's by a river, and that's by a river, and that's by a river. Ellicott City sits on two rivers. They crisscross at the bottom of the town. There are two rivers and multiple streams and creeks that go through that town. And even in Pennsylvania, there's the Susquehanna River, and there's so many stories along the Susquehanna River of ghosts, of all kinds of other paranormal activity, of just like strange creatures being sighted all along the river. And it's a fascinating, I guess, not coincidence that there are so many stories like that along the water.
Yeah, and also limestone. I heard that limestone is like a supercharge for paranormal activity. Like if you see a place where maybe they have like a graveyard or something, or maybe underneath it, it used to be like, let's say, a massive land full of limestone. I heard that supercharges paranormal activity. I don't know what the reason could be behind it, but anywhere there is limestone, the energies of paranormal activities are over the roof. Like, especially when it comes to EMF readings, you'll receive a whole lot of it. And I've actually mentioned that, and I'm curious. Do you use any tools during your paranormal guides or maybe paranormal investigations that you could do personally?
When I'm doing a tour, my brain is my only tool, and I do have a lantern I carry so that people don't trip in the dark. But those are just pragmatic, practical things, right? When I have been on like research trips into homes or buildings, there are two small tools that I do carry. I've had this for over 20 years. This is a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got amethyst and labradorite crystal, and a bead in the middle is made of glass, and literally the same one I've had for more than 20 years. And it's not doing anything right now. I guess my office is blessedly free of entities at the moment. And the other thing I started using in the past few years, these are dowsing rods. Mm-hmm. And they are made of copper, and I don't have them sort of set up to use right now, but they will swing when there's an entity around. Oh, and they're swinging right now, which is interesting. But they're swinging towards the window. But incidentally, there's water that way as well. You might be interested to know that. The river is over there. But can you reset? Yeah, there they go. They're resetting. But yes, I do use dowsing rods. I do use my pendulum. Neither of these are fancy tools. I don't have any electronics. I trust my intuition. I think because I do divination, and I'm used to sort of relying on my self, I guess, as the tool, that I keep my tools very simple. They have been very effective. When I have been in ghost hunting situations, they work really well for me. And I have even gotten so far as to identify, that a particular woman in the group's mother was trying to come through. She didn't die in the location, but because the energy was open in that space, she tried to come through to her daughter. And that she was able to sort of interact with her mother using the dowsing rods. And it's interesting. It's kind of like you said, when the energy is opened, everything can come through. Yeah. Really, everything can come through. And it can be bad, but it can also be good. Like when she was trying to reach resolution with her mom, who they had died on bad terms, and she really wanted to tell her, I love you, I'm sorry, all that kind of thing. And even though a pendulum and a dowsing rod are really only good for like yes, no answers, it was enough to get closure for her. So in that way, that was a really touching experience, and nothing to do with the space. It was literally nothing to do with that building at all. That lady wasn't even from the same town. Her mother had never been in that particular old house. It just was because the energy was open and she could get in.
Mm-hmm. I've also seen, like you mentioned, the pendulum, and I remember there's somebody who had, like, let me just call it a mat. Like a mat. Mm-hmm. It has yes, no, it has numbers, it has letters, like in a spherical form. And they could use and they could use the pendulum to ask questions, just the same way you could use a Ouija board to ask questions. So they couldn't just ask yes or no questions. They could even ask questions to do with numbers or maybe dates. It even had the days of the month, like January, February, March, April, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, it's like a comprehensive mat. So they can use it. And I've always been intrigued, like, when you're using dowsing rods and pendulums, are you like channeling your own energy into these things? Because it's not like EMF readers or any other, like even the Boo Bear. There's this teddy bear that has just come out. They call it the Boo Bear. Like if there is any paranormal presence, if they touch it, the bear talks.
I've seen it.
It doesn't work with wind or anything like that. You physically have to touch that bear, like squeeze it so that it can speak. And it's like, you see, these things are so technical, but for a pendulum and a dowsing rod, it's somewhat your energy pushing on.
I'm sure that my energy imprint is on it. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I've always wondered how could you ask? Yes, a ghost can move the pendulum and all that. Maybe they can try and touch it, and energy to energy they can try to move it, but for you yourself, let's say you weren't even asking something that's there. You're asking something beyond. It's not even physically there in the paranormal location. It's something beyond. I've always thought that maybe you're channeling your own energy, trying to push your own thoughts, your own psyche into this thing, and then it will start moving and all that. And it's always intrigued me, by the way, when I see people using dowsing rods or pendulums, and I'm like, wow, I want to do that too. I want to learn how to do that. Will it work for me, or will it just flop and not work at all? Because it happens.
I've definitely picked up pendulums that did not work for me. So I've been like, oh, I've had this one a long time. Maybe I should get a new one. And the new one just hangs all the time. Doesn't work. It's like, meh, not into you. So I'm okay with that. I mean, it looks lovely on the shelf. But I always come back to this one because it does always work for me, and it's been with me a long time. It's been repaired several times. There are times when the swing got so wide that the jump rings physically broke, and like the crystal went flying across the room. I definitely was not trying to do that. I can tell you for sure, because I would be really sad if the amethyst part broke. But that said, I'm sure there must be some of my energy in it because I'm touching it. And in those moments, I am open to the idea that I'm simply the channel. It's kind of like when I'm doing a reading. I'm simply the channel to what is coming through for that person. And I trust myself to hold space for that and to keep it in a safe place, if that makes sense. At least that's always my intention.
Yeah, so pendulums are like wands from Harry Potter. Not all of them will work for you. You have to find that right one that speaks to you, that's meant to be yours. Otherwise, it's just a crystal on a string. It's just
which is very
just
pretty.
A crystal standing there.
Yeah, very
it
pretty.
Looks pretty, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I've not had a lot of them. Like I said, this one I've had. How old am I? I've had this one almost 30 years. Now that I think about it.
Oh, that's a long time still.
Almost 30 years. Yeah. And it still works. Like I said, it's needed repairs. It's needed new jump rings. It's needed like fresh chain. But it's always come back together, and it's always worked hard for me. So I appreciate it.
Going back to paranormal locations, is there like a strike of balance between the historical facts about these locations and the supernatural elements that come with the locations themselves?
Sometimes. I'm going to say that it is not always 100% true, that the history overlaps the paranormal activity. And it's kind of like you said, sometimes the paranormal activity comes in later. It comes in from somebody else. It doesn't come in from the original builders or inhabitants of a space. And I even think there are people who die in spaces that successfully cross and don't haunt it. They move on to whatever it is that awaits us on the other side of the veil, and I don't know what that is. I won't pretend to. But I think that sometimes the history of the space is relevant to the haunting. And sometimes the haunting and the history are unrelated. And it's very difficult to connect the lines in those cases. I can even think specifically, I was doing a video about the history of a building, and we knew the building was haunted, and I had been speaking out loud to the ghost, just sort of like saying, hey, we're in your spot, I hope you don't mind. And I heard a very soft whisper behind me, assuring me it was fine to be in the space. The cameraman, who had headphones on and had sound mic on me, heard a horrible screaming, scratchy sound that hurt his ears so bad he couldn't hear for several minutes. We had a completely different experience in that space, completely different experience of that sound, and he was in no hurry to ever go back to that restaurant. Whereas I had a very calm whisper in my ear. He was just like, oh my God, my ears, is my hearing damaged? Like, am I going to be okay? I didn't have an experience like that at all. So was it the technology? Maybe. The technology that was between him and that spirit. I'm not sure. Or did that spirit simply not like that cameraman? I can't answer the question.
Probably. Probably. Or maybe they just don't like tech, because it happens. You go into paranormal places and then all your tech just shuts down. Nothing is working, but you hear things, so you can't capture it. just because the ghost didn't like whatever you came with, or maybe they
Right.
didn't like you as a person. It happens. But you spoke about the sounds, and I just remembered something. I hate ghost sounds, like anything whispering in my ear, because and people will start wondering, where did you hear it? You stay indoors half of your life. I'm like, no. When I was in high school, I was in boarding school, by the way, and it's an all-girls school, and people are like, you know what, Kenzie, you talk to yourself too much. I'm like, no, I don't talk to myself like in a weird way. It's like trying to talk to me via me. I'm like looking at myself in the mirror and trying to chat myself up, trying to psych myself up. But this one day, I'm just getting my clothes out of the clothing line, and I hear my name, my middle name, like the only person who calls me like that is my mom, and I hear something whispering, and I'm like, oh, you're going crazy. Maybe you're hungry. Hurry up, go eat. And then I hear it again, and then I'm like, oh, no, 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 don't answer it. Even if it's God, don't answer it. And then the third time, I heard it so loud, it's like somebody screaming next to my ear. And that's when I turned, and I'm like, wait, no, 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 that was too loud. And I'm looking around, I'm trying to find out who is, and everybody who is around me, mind you, is like meters away from me. They're not so close to me. So the whisper, and then the whisper, and then the yell of my name. And I'm so shocked at this time. I'm like, who's trying to call me? Who's like clearly calling my name? Because I ignored the first time, ignored the second time, the third time it came as a shout. And I'm looking around, and I can't hear anything completely. I'm just spooked now at this moment. And I've always thought that maybe it's something in my head, because at that time there was a lot going on in my life, and I was just trying to figure things out, just trying to call out to me. But no. That was a whisper. Like clearly it was a whisper, like somebody was just right next to your ear saying, Rissa. And then you ignore it, and then Rissa. And then you ignore it. And then the third Rissa that comes, it's so loud that you have to like look around because it spooked the hell out of you. And from then on, I'm like, you know what? I hate ghosts that speak to me. I don't want anything speaking to me. Just show yourself. Just drop things like a normal ghost does. Don't try and speak to me, please. Because it's spooky. It's so spooky. And you never expect it. It's not the shivers that comes, it's not the same shivers you get when a door closes, or a cup falls, or maybe you hear footsteps. When you start hearing things in your ear, like so close to you, you can even feel the breath that does not exist. That triggers something inside you that never stops for a while.
Well, we found out later in my case that
It's so spooky.
it happens a lot in that space. It was a restaurant. It was a working, functioning place, and allegedly they said that a lot of the servers say it happens to them, that the ghosts will whisper to them, or there's often the scent of lavender when the ghost is around, but the ghost stands next to them or behind them and will speak to them using their names, whether or not they've ever acknowledged the ghosts in that space. So, yeah, my experience in the place wasn't unique. It was the cameraman who actually had the unique experience. Poor guy. So.
Oh, maybe whatever he heard from the mic's end was not what he expected. Maybe the ghost was actually whispering, but when it comes into sound waves and all that through the mic and everything, it will sound like a shriek and all that. And maybe all this time when we think that ghosts are yelling at us through the mics and cameras, maybe they're just whispering nice things and we don't know. But whatever we hear in the end, it's like very cold serial killer shivers and screams from from this ghost. Because come to think of it, a lot of noises that you hear, they're so loud from the camera's end. They're so loud. They're so spooky as well. And also there's this, I don't know if you've heard it, there's this new method that people have been using for the past 2 years called the Estes method, where you're using a spirit box and the headphones. Right. And you put yourself into a state of trance and you try to listen through the spirit box what the things are saying. And most of the times you hear a screech, like something yelling or maybe screaming something at you, because obviously a spirit box is trying to find radio frequencies and all that. But sometimes the words that are said there, why would they even be spoken in a radio station in the first place? Why would a radio station scream murder at you, or maybe scream something very horrific at you? So these methods, you find maybe the ghosts are actually trying to go on with the age of technology. They don't understand it, obviously. We've never met a ghost from 2000 plus. I've always heard ghosts of the 90s going back, which is curious. Did everybody who just died in this century go to heaven or something? Or they're so woke, they're like, you know what? For those from the 70s, from the 80s, very bitter ghosts. I've actually had a story of a very bitter ghost because the one who died because of poisoning. He died while eating his food, his afternoon lunch.
Well,
Yeah, and it was so bad. It was so bad because 2 years ago, somebody had also tried to poison him, but instead his wife ate it. The story is funny because people have always thought that it was a very jealous neighbor who wanted to marry the man. And so when he rejected her, he tried to poison him, but the wife ate it. And then obviously that backfired. And then 2 years later, they poisoned him again and they succeeded. He actually died while eating his food because it was poisoned. And I'm like, oh my, yeah, it's so surprising. And now I'm even shocked at eating at people's places because I'm like, oh my God, maybe this person has a very heartless neighbor. What if I ate the food and it was maybe targeted to them? Also, the other place that I was telling you about, Sentinel Hall, the girl that was poisoned, she was poisoned while playing music. Like her clarinet, the end of her clarinet that goes to her mouth was actually poisoned. And then the moment she put it in her mouth, she died. And now each and every time people go there, they hear a girl playing clarinet music.
They hear her
and they hear musical instruments play. Yeah, because for almost several years, they never played music in that school anymore. Because the children could always hear music playing, but nobody was playing any musical instrument. So they just shut down the whole music program and all that. I'm like, whoa. Did you really poison your fellow student who's playing a clarinet? How jealous would you have to be to poison a girl playing clarinets?
Yeah.
She's not even playing a violin or maybe the grand piano. It's the clarinet. What did she ever do to you? A very young girl, I think she was 11, or if she was way older, it was 14. She wasn't like high school or anything. No, she was quite young and then died brutally. Or the girl that died on stage performing at Alliance Theatre, she was an actress, and a chandelier fell on her head and she died, collapsed in front of people.
I have a chandelier dropping story in Maryland, but I have reached the spot where I have to go for today.
Oh, then we'll continue.
Because this feels like a good one.
Yeah, instead of starting it and then breaking it, I think we'll just break this segment into part 2 so that the audience would catch on. So I think we'll break this episode here, but everybody who is listening, just catch us on part 2 of this episode per se with Rissa Miller. Don't forget to always check out our social media pages, check out Rissa's website, check out her Facebook. She actually does very nice photos. If you love dogs, she has a dog, she takes it for walks, and I love checking those pics every single day. So check out our social media pages, ladies and gentlemen. Links will be in the description. But until we see you again in part 2, stay safe, stay spooky, and have yourselves a lovely week. Bye guys.
Bye.